Hi guys, Chef Laura here. Today I thought I'd take it to Spain and make a little sangria and some paella. Summer's coming, so I always enjoy making sangria in the summertime. It reminds me of hanging out with my family for holidays like 4th of July. So let's get started. First we'll start with the sangria. You are gonna need some red wine. You can use whatever red wine you prefer. I like Cabernet Sauvignon, but if you wanna go traditional to Spain, you can use a Rioja. And then the most important thing to remember about your sangria when you're making it is to plan in advance and make it at least 1 to 2 days before you're going to serve it. That way all of the fresh fruits and juices that are going into the wine have time to marry the flavors together, and then your sangria will come out great. So let's get started with the ingredients. Okay, so I'm starting with a Cabernet Sauvignon because that is my favorite red wine. Then you're also going to need a sparkling wine, but that's not going to go in until you actually serve the sangria. And I'm using a cava, which is Spanish for champagne. Of course, it can be only champagne if it comes from the Champagne region. You can also use a sparkling wine from the United States. Then some things that you can alternate are like fresh stone fruits that happen to be ripe in the season. So I did actually pick up a peach and I went ahead and chopped it up and took the core out of the center. And then these ingredients I always include in a sangria. Whether or not you're going to alternate some other fruits is great, but I always include fresh pineapple, fresh strawberries, and then one of the very most important ingredients is some fresh oranges, and most important, some grapes. And I did find these beautiful medley grapes of fresh ones. They are nice and big and chunky, and I really enjoy that in the sangria. Then you're also gonna need brandy. This is about 4 ounces of brandy. And then I have here some freshly squeezed orange juice. And what I used was 1 whole orange. I made 3 slices and then cut those into little wedges. And then I have the rest of the orange here that I'm gonna squeeze the juice out of in my little juicer here into my pitcher of red wine. So I did go ahead and chop everything ahead of time. So again, I've got some fresh stone fruits, peaches, and I'm just gonna dump that in there. Fresh pineapple, and if you can, use as much of the fresh juice from the pineapple as well. So I do have some left over there. So I'm gonna pour everything into the pitcher. Fresh chopped strawberries. Fresh orange wedges. Then I'm just gonna take my fresh oranges and squeeze those into the pitcher. And we'll squeeze all of the orange juice into the pitcher. And then some brandy. That's about 4 ounces. Any brand is fine. And that's it. So then you would actually finish squeezing all of the oranges and put that in there as well. And again, that's just 1 whole orange. Now, the most important thing about making sangria is you do want to make it at least 1 to 2 days in advance so that all of that fruit and all of those juices marry nicely. Hi guys. Now we're going to learn how to make paella. And paella does have quite a few ingredients, but they can vary depending on your personal tastes. But I'm going to kind of start with some of the necessary ingredients and then we'll move on to the proteins, which can vary. So you'll need a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. That's about 2 tablespoons. We may or may not use the whole thing. It just really kind of depends on after we saute the chicken and the sausage and the rice if we need a little bit more. You will definitely need some saffron. That is about 1 tablespoon of saffron. You'll need some paprika. I have about 1.5 tablespoons of paprika. Some diced yellow onion, fresh garlic, and then some chopped drained tomatoes. I did use canned petite diced tomato, and try and drain out as much of the liquid as you can. And I am using some chicken stock. You could also use half chicken stock and half clam juice to give it a little bit more of a seafood flavor if you like, but I'm just using the chicken stock. This is 1 small 14-ounce can of tomatoes. This is 2 cups of water, and the reason why it's very specific on that is the ratio to the rice that we're going to be using is 1 to 2. So 1 cup of rice, 2 cups of liquid. Then we have our garlic, freshly chopped garlic, salt and pepper, some sliced raw chicken breast, that is just 1 chicken breast, Spanish chorizo sausage. Now when you go to the market, make sure that you get the right kind of chorizo. The Spanish chorizo is more of like the sausage that you're used to. It is a smoked sausage, so it is already cooked. Mexican chorizo looks the same on the outside, but it's raw, and when you cook Mexican chorizo, you take the casing off and it crumbles. So make sure it is a cooked chorizo, which will be a Spanish style or even a Portuguese style, and not the raw chorizo, which is Mexican. Then you are going to need a Spanish rice, but you can also use arborio rice, which basically is the same kind of short grain rice. This one is called Matisse that I got at my local market. And then I'm going to use some large 16 to 20 count prawns. I did buy the ones that are already peeled, just the tail on, because it's easier to eat rather than trying to peel them after they're cooked and out of the pan. And then you will need a little bit of fresh lemon wedges. That's for your garnish on the top. A little fresh flat leaf parsley or Italian parsley for garnish. And I like to add, but you don't need it, a little bit of fresh thyme and a little bit of bay leaf into the pot when I'm cooking my rice. So those are all of our ingredients. We are going to move over to the stove in just a moment, but I do want to say that paella is kind of a two-part dish. You do want to heat all of your liquids and some of your spices in a pot first, and then we're going to be cooking off the protein separately and then adding the rice to that pan. The reason why you want your water to be hot is the longer you cook the rice, the more it's going to burn. But we also do want a little bit of burnt on the bottom. A perfect paella has the crust on the bottom of burnt rice. It's called the socarat, which people seek out in a really good paella dish. So you do want a little bit of burnt on the bottom, but not too much. That's why we're going to start with hot liquid first. Okay, so we're going to start with just heating up our broth first to get going. I'm going to do the diced tomatoes in a pot. Then I'm doing my chicken stock, and again, you could do 1 cup chicken stock and 1 cup clam juice if you want a little bit more of a seafood flavor. I prefer just the chicken. Then I'm going to add my saffron, my paprika, tiny pinch of pepper, and a tiny pinch of salt. Be careful with your salt because your stock will have some sodium in it as well. And then I'm just going to add my fresh thyme and my bay leaves to the pot. And I'm just going to let that simmer till it starts bubbling, and then we'll keep it warm while we're cooking the other ingredients, so that way it's nice and hot and ready to go when the rice is ready to start cooking. Okay, so now we're going to start with sauteing our proteins to get ready to make the paella. I have my pot of my liquids steaming over here, just on a low boil, just so it starts to bubble just a little bit. Then you don't need a paella pan to make paella, but you do need a big shallow pan if you've got one, or a cast iron skillet would do fine as well. And I'm just going to add about a tablespoon of the olive oil there. I do like to cook my Spanish chorizo just to get a little bit of like that caramelization on the outside. You don't really have to, it is already a smoked item, but I like that char on the outside of it. So we're just going to go ahead and add this to the pan. We're just going to cook that off until it gets a nice little crispy char on it. So I have a really light caramelization on the chorizo, so I'm just going to remove it. The chorizo has paprika in it, so it turned the oil in the pot red. So don't be surprised when you add your chicken to the pot to brown your chicken, that the chicken takes on a little bit of a reddish color. That's very typical of paella anyway. So now I'm just going to add my raw chicken to the pan, and I'm going to brown it until it's nice and golden. It doesn't need to be 100% fully cooked because it is going to continue to cook in the rice, but you don't want raw chicken to start out with. So we're just going to add it through there, and we're just going to brown it on all sides. So I have my chicken here browning in the pan. I did turn it over so you can see a little bit of caramelization. I'm only cooking it about a minute on each side, so it's still going to be fairly raw in the middle. But again, you don't want to put the raw chicken in there. But this is good to go, so we're just going to go ahead and pull it out. Now I've taken out my chicken, and I've added my chopped onion to the pan, and I'm just going to saute those for a few minutes. They already look kind of yellow just because, again, the paprika in the pan. So we're just going to turn the heat just a little bit. and get those nice and golden. And then we're gonna add our garlic to the pan. And my fresh sliced garlic, this is about 4 cloves. And we're just gonna saute that up for just a moment with the onions. And I do think that I need the rest of that oil, so I'm just gonna go ahead and put that in the pot right now. And that's gonna be for the rice, because you're gonna saute the rice as well. Okay, so my onion and my garlic are sauteing nicely, nice and golden. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my Spanish paella rice. And remember, if you can't find this rice, it's basically the same as an arborio rice, which is an Italian rice used to make risotto. So we're just gonna go ahead and saute off your rice in the oil until it starts to become translucent. Then we'll add the liquid and all of the other ingredients except for the shrimp. And my paella rice is nice and translucent. Just before it's starting to get golden, I'm gonna go ahead and put my liquid in there. Nice and hot. It's been going this whole time on a medium-low boil. The most important thing about paella is once you get everything in there, do not stir your rice, because that will make your rice sticky, and you don't want it to be sticky. You want nice individual grains of rice. So we're throwing our tomato, saffron mixture in there with the chicken stock. I'm going to turn this down to the absolute lowest setting. I'm going to get my chicken in the pot. Just kind of spread that out a little bit. Then I'm going to add my Spanish chorizo to the pot. And again, just kind of spreading it out. Oftentimes, paella also has peas in it. You can also do artichoke hearts if you like, or some sliced black olives. But I prefer it without the peas, and I don't have olives or artichokes. So paella is on the absolute lowest setting. We're going to set our timer for 15 minutes. We are not going to stir this rice, and then when we come back, we're going to add the shrimp to the top, cover it, and let it sit for the last 5 minutes. Like most rice, it takes about 20 minutes to cook. So my paella has been simmering in the pan for about 15 minutes. You can still see a little bit of the liquid in there, so that's good. When the paella is ready, the liquid will pretty much be all gone. So right now we're going to add the shrimp to the top of that. And I have not touched this rice at all. No stirring, remember. Absolutely no stirring on your paella. I'm just going to arrange it nicely in the same direction so it looks pretty in the pot. And I did use the already peeled shrimp. They do still have the tail on though. All facing the same direction, which looks pretty. We got 2 left, so we'll put them in the center there. I'm going to add just a pinch of salt and pepper because they have not been seasoned with anything, just on top of the shrimp. And then I'm going to put a lid on this for about 3 minutes until the shrimp is fully cooked, and then I'm going to take the lid off. Okay, so my paella looks pretty done. I had the shrimp under the lid for about 3 minutes. It did need a little bit more, so I did do it for the full 5 minutes with the lid over the paella. Because of that, also obviously causes some steam, so it added a little bit more liquid back into the pan. So now I'm going to take the lid off, and I'm going to let it cook for about maybe 2 more minutes. I can see it's starting to get a little bit of that crusty on the outside where the rice is starting to caramelize. That's what's called the soquerat, and you want to leave that in there, so that's perfect. So I want it to absorb a little bit more liquid, so I'm going to put this on low and let it simmer while I get plates ready and get the wine ready. Okay, so I took my lid off. My paella had been cooking for about 20 minutes. It was 15 minutes. Take the lid off, add the shrimp, another 5 more minutes for the shrimp to steam. Then I looked at my paella and I felt like it didn't have enough of the crusty on the outside that I wanted. It still had too much liquid. So I have cooked it for about another 7 minutes on medium high, just so you can see. Nice and crusty and golden. I don't know if you can see this on the outside, but there's a little bit of crustiness going on the outside of the rice there. Again, you don't want it to burn. You just want that nice crust going. So my paella is ready. We're gonna go ahead and pull it off the fire. I've got my beautiful paella here. I'm just gonna garnish it with a little bit of freshly chopped parsley. And typically you'd serve it with lemon wedges on the table so that your guests can squeeze their own lemon. So we're just gonna squeeze a little bit of lemon juice across. That gives it just a nice bright citrus flavor, and it adds a little bit of flavor to the shrimp as well. And now I'm gonna do my sangria. So I've got my Spanish cava here, which is their sparkling wine from Spain. So we can get the top off. All right. Yay! Then I've got my beautiful sangria that has been simmering in the refrigerator, I should say, marrying in the refrigerator for about a day and a half. And we're just gonna pour a little bit on ice in my wine glass here. And then you just wanna give it a little tiny float, so maybe about an ounce or so of the cava or any other sparkling champagne that you want, or sparkling wine. Little garnish. And salud, paella, and sangria.